From the Fans Talk Podcast family and fanstalkpodcast.com, this is episode 52 of Fans Talk Lucha, and this week it's going to be a double episode. We missed last week, so we're going to be talking about Season 3, Episode 8, and Season 3, Episode 9 of Lucha Underground. We're going to recap and review everything that took place, talk a little bit about the tribe conversation that I brought up a few weeks back. And it's going to be fun. So let's do this. My name is Garvin, and with us, as always, when he can make it, is Adam. Say hello, Adam.
Oh, what's up, guys?
Oh, man. So let's just go ahead and get started with the conversation. Season 3, Episode 8 of Lucha Underground started off Cueto looking at his reports. Sexy Star interrupted. She basically was like, I don't have competition. I want to turn in my title to take on Matanza for the Lucha Underground Championship. Cueto goes ahead and agrees. He books that match. However, she has to beat Johnny Mundo tonight. If she wins, then she gets to go ahead and turn in that title shot. But Drago, Phoenix, and Aerostar, if they interfere, they are banned for life, but she doesn't need help. That's what she says.
Yep.
Next up, we had Marty with Mariposa versus Eva Lise. What'd you think about this match?
I thought it was pretty good. Again, it's kind of going towards that trend. Well, I can't help but think that it's going towards that trend in the back of my mind that we've seen a lot of women versus women matches this season. And I hope that doesn't mean we have now permanently separated the men's division from the women's division, because that was one of the things I really liked about Lucha Underground, and that they were so innovative in that way. That all said, though, it was still a really good match. I mean, we don't really get to see Mariposa often, period, really, outside of the odd Marty match here or there. So to see her kind of be able to strut her stuff a little bit more is always welcome. So I was happy about that.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I thought overall we were seeing a trend in women versus women. But yeah, I'm glad it was brought back up. Thoughts on the Martinezes? This is being talked about in the live chat. But what's your thoughts there? Do you like Marty and Mariposa and their overall interaction together and with their opponents?
I mean, yeah, they definitely, at least on camera, live the gimmick. They don't ever shy away from doing what they got to do to, present themselves as the creepy bastards, as the crowd likes to call them. I would say they don't really make me too uncomfortable in that way. I do think they kind of serve themselves a little better when they have a target. When Marty was feuding with Killshot, or Marty / Mariposa feuding with Sexy Star or something, they definitely were a lot more interesting, and I think they get a little bit more creative with their creepiness when they have someone to creep on, I guess you could say. So I'm not sure if this is going to continue between the Martinezes and Ivelisse and her boyfriend. I guess time will tell on that. But for right now, I think if they have if they start getting the ball rolling a little bit more vigorously, I think the feud will become a little bit more interesting.
Yeah, I'm with you overall as far as with the setting. The setting definitely helps when there's someone else to bounce back off of, when there's those mind games being played. But when it's just a random match that this kind of felt like, it didn't have the same general vibe, because it was just a straight up match. Marty versus Ivelisse. There wasn't room for those types of mind games. But yeah, overall, I'm definitely enjoying Marty. I think Marty is a great character and a great wrestler. Mariposa, not as much. I'm not as much behind her. It I don't know. It just doesn't carry the same vibe for me that Marty does.
I would definitely agree with that. Like I said, it doesn't seem like we get to see much of Mariposa being herself, or not necessarily not being herself, but like we don't get to see her develop her character as well as Marty does. That's partially, I think, because, Marty talks and she doesn't. We also tend to see Marty more than we see her in all aspects, like backstage segments, matches, just in-ring segments of all kinds. So I think if we were able to see her away from Marty and kind of potentially doing her own thing, that might, develop her character a little better.
Yeah. So after this match, Marty and Mariposa, they attack Ivelisse. Jeremiah comes out, makes the save. It becomes a 2-on-2. They clear out the ring, and then Ivelisse and Jeremiah, they basically argue because, that ongoing story that we've already seen started, a few weeks back, where she does not want an in-ring companion. She wants to separate her personal life and her work life. So they argued a bit. That argument carried into the parking lot, but she basically accepted, the idea of them working together in ring. So potential Mariposa versus Jeremiah and Ivelisse feud in the next few weeks. I think that definitely has some weight to it. Definitely should be interesting.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a good feud for Jeremiah to cut his teeth on, to be honest.
Very interesting segment that I think quite a few people missed. Cueto meeting. It basically transitioned from the argument in the parking lot to this. Cueto gets into the limo with the councilman. The boss guy was not there. I don't think I caught all the dialogue, but the gist that I got was that the boss had descended and that Cueto needs to choose who becomes that person. So like where his soul goes into. So Cueto is handed a box. Cueto says that he has already chosen 2 host bodies and basically alludes that it's going to be the winner of Cage Tejano, that best of 5 series. So that's the unique opportunity, I guess, is that whoever wins is going to become this figurehead, I guess. But yeah, for everyone who's complaining that we hadn't seen Tejano and Cage recently, that they kind of dropped that best of 5 series for the last few weeks at least. We got it. So before we talk about the match, because it did happen next, what's your thoughts on this and where it's leading to?
Well, if I had my choice as to which of the 2 I would pick based on a character standpoint, I would hope Tejano is the one that gets picked to be the host. It would also be interesting. A thought I just had while you were kind of setting it up there. I wonder if it's going to be the winner or the loser that is chosen. But either way, like I think Tejano, as we've talked about before, I think he's the one that needs a little bit of a shot in the arm as far as character is concerned. So I could see, this kind of storyline doing that. Whereas Cage already seems to have quite a bit of charisma, even for being, more or less a man of few words as he is. The crowd's already super over for him. And while I would see in story his body being a little bit more ideal for, a host because it's bigger and stronger and all that stuff, I think it would, behind the scenes, I think it would benefit Tejano a little more to kind of be able to explore a newer character in a creative way.
Yeah, and also keep in mind, Cage is not a man; he is a machine. So giving him a soul would be interesting.
Yeah.
But I'm with you. If I had to choose, I would also choose Tejano just because they hype this guy up, and the matches at least the last few matches that he's had with Cage. Like I've started to appreciate him as a wrestler, but overall boring. He's a boring character with no real direction, and giving this to Tejano, I think, would give me reason to like Tejano.
Yeah.
Putting it on Cage, I think is risky, only because, like you said, he's already over with the crowd. He has a character. He has the charisma to lead that character. This would allow this would allow Tejano to finally get something to take hold of. So yeah, I've got to go with Tejano as well, which goes against my original predictions. My original predictions is that I wanted Cage to win.
Well, like I said, it also depends on, is it the winner that is going to be chosen to be the host or the loser? I mean, arguably you would say the winner because that would seem like that would prove how perfect a specimen that person is. But, Dario doesn't always think inside the box. So,
yeah, it could be another one of those scenarios where the winner gets two choices. Either, they get a title shot, or, with Aztec Warfare coming up. Actually, I don't know if there's any way for them to really fit in that. I don't know. But with something bigger coming up, maybe it's title shot. Maybe it's an automatic medallion in the Gift of the Gods match to crown a new... oh, no, I'm sorry, because... Never mind. I don't know. It could be something. Either, two choices. Either you get something or you get what's in the box.
right.
So I think Cage would maybe choose that other thing, that, a title shot or whatever.
Sure.
So yeah, I could definitely see that. In the match, Cage, the only real note that I had was that Cage worked a bit more passively. He wasn't as aggressive as he was before. Obviously, being up 2-0 would give him some kind of confidence, but it still felt kind of strange the way Cage was fighting this match. So Tejano won with a small package, and yeah, so that was the match. Any thoughts of the match?
I mean, it wasn't surprising to me. Cage was already up 2-0, so most of the time in these situations, kind of a similar thing to the Cesaro Sheamus best of 7. Like at a certain point, like if someone has a pretty commanding lead, the other they're going to go to all 5 or all 7 or however many in best of matches. Like they're going to go to the last match. It's pretty pointless to even have a best of series if you're not going to go all the way with it. So I kind of expected Tejano to win, and I wasn't like too enthralled by the match just because of that. Like that's sort of one of the downsides to best of series, is that like once you get to the middle of it, you can kind of usually see where it's going, and it becomes almost instantly boring at that point. You just want to see the very end. So
yeah, but it's all about the story that's being told, and with the best of series, you do get that back and forth. You get usually you've got one stronger guy, so Cage getting the lead. Then it's on Tejano to, fight back, win the crowd, back into his corner kind of thing, and make it seem like these are even competitors. So, I mean, it does allow for that. I just don't think Tejano has really done a good job on that side of things as far as winning the crowd over. I mean, it wasn't a good win in my book, at least. It was a small package. It didn't really seem like Cage was on his A game, as far as all that goes. And yes, live chat is reminding us about, just the fact that Cage is cocky. It was something pushed over by both Vampiro and Stryker. So, but at the same time, like, Tejano's got to do a good job at selling himself. It's not, it can't just be Tejano gets a cheap win because Cage is playing this one relaxed. It should be Tejano getting a solid victory, and I don't think he did that.
Sure, and I think kind of to the live chat's credit as well, just because I mean that also lends itself to Cage's charisma. That there's a certain cockiness to him, but you can't help but love the guy because, I mean, from all the setup to Tejano's character that we've seen before, he's not exactly the most humble guy either. He can get pretty cocky himself, and yet his cockiness just isn't really endearing. It's not something that we are interested in or really want to see more of or anything like that. So it definitely, as I said before, with just a shot in the arm of some sort of charismatic element, I think would really help his character a lot.
Yeah. So this will go the full 5, right?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Like I said,
I'm in agreement with that. Live chat is saying the same thing, that Tejano's going to win this next one and push it to the final match.
Yeah. Like I said, there's no point in doing a best of series if you don't go to the max amount of matches allotted, unless you just really want to bury whoever loses in a clean sweep.
All right, so backstage, Cueto is by himself with the box. Ray interrupts, and he wants Cueto to give him Chavo next week. He wants Cueto to give Chavo his 1 week notice, because next week Ray versus Chavo in a loser leaves Lucha match. And generally speaking, Cueto agrees. This goes back to what we saw the week prior with Rey Mysterio, basically asking for forgiveness, asking for permission from Chavo Classic to take out Chavo. So It's official. It's going to be happening. Episode 9. We'll talk about it in a little bit. But overall, how do you think this fits with everything?
I think it was a quick build to build up to the match that happens on the next episode, which I'm sure we'll get to. But even for being quick, I thought it was pretty. The thing with Chavo and Ray, which they also exercised when Ray first debuted in WWE, it's always been there. It always will be there. They grew up together along with Eddie and all that stuff. So it's kind of a tailor-made feud that you don't really have to add a lot more to. And I think they did pretty well, considering they didn't have a lot of time, or they didn't at least devote a lot of time to building up the match. I think they made the minutes count, and I was very excited for it. So,
yeah, what's interesting about this feud is that Lucha Underground is not treating us like we're stupid. They're not treating us like we don't understand the history behind Ray and Chavo and the Guerrero family, you know, that we are general wrestling fans. We come from watching WWE. We come from watching, you know, WCW or what have you. So, yeah, I do appreciate that fact. I think this is one of the only feuds that, you know, wasn't necessarily built by Lucha Underground. Like Lucha Underground has been telling great stories and building the importance of everything, but they're allowing this one to just sell itself because of the history that it's aware that most of its, you know, viewers are already used to. So I think that's a nice, you know, it definitely sets them apart from other organizations. WWE would try to create a feud and sell just on what you're seeing on TV versus what you already know about them.
Well, yeah, because, you know, I would say the WWE's best example of that would probably be, at least recently, would probably be Zayn versus Owens, which, to your point, they still make sure to tell you, hey, these guys were like super best friends and now they're not, and they hate each other and all that stuff, even though, you know, as you said before, we're not stupid and we know at least a passing history of them that they've had throughout the indies. Not to mention, it's, you know, Ray and Chavo is just, it's one of those feuds. It's kind of like Brett versus Michaels or something like that. Like if both of them had defected to WCW, let's say, and started wrestling and continuing their feud there, maybe WCW would try to hold your hand in the beginning, but ultimately, like, it's just one of those matchups that, you know, no matter what, there's always going to be some sort of, at least kayfabe, bad blood there. You know, there's always some sort of spark to just reignite that hatred between the two of them. So it's really to any promoter's benefit to just kind of roll with that promotion and get the essentially free advertising from another wrestling company, you know, because like I said, there's just, in those kind of matchups, there's just that certain spark of energy that is just always going to be there. And there's really not much else you have to do to make it good. It's already tailor made to be good. So I think it's, again, within Lucha Underground's best interest to just, you know, roll with that momentum and not try and make it their own. And it is nice to see that they're actually doing that. You know, not a lot of other, like you're saying, not a lot of other companies would, you know, I guess it's not really a risk because you already know the money's there, but that not a lot of companies would want to, I think, especially WWE for, you know, certain reasons, Vince McMahon, but certain reasons they wouldn't want to give some other promotion like free advertising, whatever. I don't know, whatever the stupid comment thing is, but yeah, I definitely think it's good that Lucha Underground is just rolling with it, letting Chavo and Ray do their thing.
Yeah, and just to briefly continue the conversation about the whole Sami Zayn, Kevin Owens build, WWE they spun that story. You know, yes, out of character they were best of friends, but they totally like skipped the entire feud that Zayn and Owens had in the ring their entire career. Like those two constantly were fighting and feuding. So it was just interesting. Well, anyways, main event: Johnny Mundo versus Sexy Star, Gift of the Gods Championship. Again, we had Aerostar, Phoenix, and Drago. If they interfered, they were banned for life. The opposite was not true for Worldwide Underground. Do you think that was Cueto just playing into how cocky Sexy Star was in that opening segment that we saw, or why do you think there was the that she couldn't have help but never said anything about Mundo not having help?
Yeah, I think in part it might have been like some cockiness on Mariposa, on Sexy Star's side. that Cueto was responding to. But at the end of the day, I think it's also just because, well, he's a heel and he's an asshole. And there could also be the potential that he sees Sexy Star very much as a threat, which I would not fault him for, because pretty much any obstacle that's ever been put in Sexy Star's way, she's conquered dominantly, like not just by the skin of her teeth. Like, you could make that argument between, the I don't remember the stipulation, but basically the hardcore street fight between her and Mariposa, that she walked out with the skin of her teeth. But that's not what I saw. I saw someone like vehemently wanting to continue the match, hurt someone that had hurt her emotionally, and walk out with her head held high, regardless of what condition her body was in. So I can see someone like that, who, and several other examples of her doing something like that, that Cueto would actually consider being a legitimate threat to Matanza,
Yeah.
So I could see that element playing into it as well.
For sure. I can definitely see that fear in Cueto. The other thing is, Mundo, he basically did pay off his debts to Cueto. So Cueto kind of giving him the free pass, probably played into that a bit. Thoughts on this match though?
So do we want to discuss the finish, or should we talk about the match as a whole first?
We can talk about whatever you feel is more important here.
Well, I definitely feel like the finish is more important for a couple key reasons. But in saying that, before I get to the finish, I will say this match was very good. I'm never disappointed when I've seen big matches that either Sexy Star or Johnny Mundo have been booked in. They usually know to hit the gas pedal pretty hard for milestone matches like this one, and they both did, and they both worked each other's style very well, lended credence to one another, and worked a very good match. That all said, I will now talk about the finish, and I cannot tell you like how angry that this finish made me, and not like in a bad angry way, if that makes sense. Like, I've seen a lot of wrestling finishes in this point in my fandom, and there are some finishes I see that I just feel like I see them from an out of kayfabe stance, where it's like, why is this happening? This doesn't make any sense. You're undercutting this guy or girl for the sake of this other thing, and it's just a stupid decision. It's not, it's not something that necessarily serves the story in any way. It's just you're doing it this way because you're stubborn and you want to be stubborn. As angry as I was about this finish, I was definitely not feeling that way though this time. It did make sense for the story. It definitely suited all of the check boxes that we had checked up to this point. Mundo had been fighting so hard to get at least a Gift of the Gods title shot, if not a Lucha Underground title shot. And finally getting it, of course he was going to pull out all the stops and do everything he could to win it, because it took him a while to even be booked in the match. So, needless to say, obviously, Johnny Mundo comes away with the Gift of the Gods championship in extremely nefarious means. And it's one of the first times that I legitimately hated the finish, in my opinion, for the right reasons. And absolutely, at this point, cannot stand Johnny Mundo. And I hope that he dies in the most painful way possible and goes to the deepest, darkest pits of hell, because he crushed my dream of a match between Sexy Star and Matanza for the Lucha Underground title. And fuck you, Johnny. You are the worst heel in wrestling right now, and I hate you.
Yeah. I don't know. Just to go back to the match real quick. Live chat saying the match was just had a real clunky feel to it. I enjoyed the opening bits, like the first 5-10 minutes before we started seeing like the ref bumps and Worldwide Underground getting involved. I did enjoy it just because we saw a little bit of a different side for Johnny Mundo. You know, he used his size and strength and brought this into more of a mat game versus Sexy Star, and I appreciated that. I like that aspect of it. But as far as Worldwide Underground's getting involved, you know, let's also acknowledge that Mac came out and, you know, made the save for Sexy Star and took out all of Worldwide Underground. I don't know. I'm with you. I think this builds Johnny Mundo in a negative light as far as his ability. It you know, he didn't need all of this. I don't think to win this match. It's a shame that this is the direction that they're going in, knowing how good Johnny Mundo can be, but at the same time, it does fit very well with the rest of the story. You know, as far as him being that heel, him being that you know, the cheater, and so for all intents and purposes, I think the end definitely worked to continue the overall story, but it just felt unneeded. The one thing though that it did do is push Sexy Star as a legitimate threat, as a legitimate competitor and potential contender for the top title, because she you know, worked through all of it. You know, despite being attacked by all members of Worldwide Underground, she still almost got that win. So, but yes, brass knuckles.
You know, I would argue a little bit that I think maybe not all of the nefarious tactics were necessary, but I think winning with the brass knucks was definitely a good choice for how Mundo should win. Because, yeah, he's been like, you know, that cocky asshole that no one really wants to invite to the party, but he essentially always shows up anyway. And, you know, that's obviously someone who is jerky and you don't like. But as I said before, I didn't actively hate him until I saw him do what he did to Sexy Star. And I think that's a necessary step if you want him to be, you know, at least a heel, if not a top heel in Lucha Underground, because I didn't ever really see, like, I saw him as, you know, a bad guy, but only in like the very basest sense of the word. Now he legitimately looks like just someone who is just shitty and willing to do whatever it takes to win. And we don't see that type of kind of purely bad heel in wrestling very often. You know, even like certain heels that are in, or I guess in this case Rudos, that are in Lucha Underground, like Mil Muertes, like arguably Pentagon Dark, depending on how you see him. There's still a certain like coolness to them and their character that you can't help but love, you know, and you don't actively hate them, you know, whenever you see them, you know, whereas I think Johnny could be that guy. I think he could be the dude that nobody wants to see, you know. So I think it was a little, by the way, presumptuous of me, I realized after I said it, to say that he was the best heel in wrestling right now, but definitely a step in the right direction. I'll say that much at least.
For sure. All right, so we're going to skip the final segment of episode 8, just because that's going to lead into some conversations from what happened in episode 9. So let's do it. Lucha Underground Season 3, Episode 9. Chavo Classic was in attendance. Cueto comes out, reminds us that in 2 weeks, Matanza will defend an Aztec warfare. But, you know, he's not going to just let Matanza rest. He knows what Matanza can do, so he's going to He's going to compete in another Dial of Doom match. Lands on Dario's choice, and once again, he chooses Cortez. Matanza versus Cortez. Cortez has a broken arm, played very heavily into this match. So overall, thoughts on Cortez again being picked on by Cueto here, and just everything. What'd you think?
I mean, it definitely made a lot of sense. One of the spots I really liked in the match was where Matanza actually grabbed. So like Cortez had like one of those casts where like your arm is basically in an L.
Mm-hmm.
And because I'm assuming there were bones broken on basically both sides of the elbow, so I had to stay in a certain position. So one of the spots I really liked a lot, probably partially because of my own injured condition, was the fact that Matanza grabbed basically Cortez's arm by both sides, and then basically straightened it out and just totally busted up the cast in one swift move, which I thought was very creative. I've actually been thinking that all week. Where I don't have a cast on my foot, but I had a like a leg splint or something. And of course, I also always am, as deep-seated as a wrestling fan as I am, I'm always thinking about wrestling moves and wrestling angles and stuff, and how the cast, at least since Edge tried to revitalize it from the Bob Orton days, has been seemingly very underutilized in wrestling. And so to have actually seen it this week be kind of utilized in a very creative and kind of gut-wrenching way. Like, it did, as much as I enjoyed that spot, it did make me feel sick to see it, because I'm sure outside of kayfabe, Cortez's arm isn't really broken, but to imagine that it was, and to see someone do that to a healing broken arm, looked pretty brutal.
Well, and don't forget the sound effect that they used when it happened. It was like that crack.
Yeah.
It was awesome. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
It definitely added a nice vibe overall to that story that they're trying to tell.
Yeah.
Majority of the match, Matanza basically destroyed him. Cortez had some fight in him, but yeah, it just wasn't enough. The interesting part at the end of the match, Cueto, basically calls him out for being a rat, for being that snitch kind of thing. So it should be interesting to see where this goes next. I'm curious why we haven't seen any type of segment yet with Cortez talking with the captain of the police department about his arm or what's going on, and that sort of thing, or why he is still in the temple as a competitor with a broken arm. It'd be nice to see that other side of him needing to remain there, kind of thing.
Sure.
After the match, we had Joey Ryan and Cueto both just laughing, just giggling about what was happening in this match. But that's when we got Son of Havoc and Mascarita Sagrada come in. Havoc speaking for Mascaritas. Mascaritas wants a match against Famous B, and Cueto is hesitant, but he overall says okay to it. But he says that prior to that, Son of Havoc has to face Dr. Wagner Jr. If Son of Havoc wins, he gets to choose the stipulation of the match. If Dr. Wagner wins, then Dr. Wagner gets to choose the stipulation. So let's go ahead and talk about this match.
Okay.
Overall thoughts: Dr. Wagner versus Son of Havoc. What do you think about this match?
I thought it was pretty good. I mean, Southern Havoc never really disappoints. I know I personally haven't really got to see a lot of Dr. Wagner in the ring, but I'm liking his style. He's not quite as flashy or high flying as most of the other luchadors that are relatively his size are. He's a little bigger than some of the high flyers, but even still, I wouldn't say his body type is all that much different than let's say him and Puma or Tejano or something like that. And those guys, like Tejano, for example, doesn't necessarily fly often, but he does fly. And wouldn't be surprised if Wagner does either. But I like that his style kind of is a little bit more methodical. You start to kind of understand like why he's got the doctor in his name, because he seems like kind of a thinker, kind of a strategist as far as match work goes. So I definitely like that aspect of it. I guess the ending was a little predictable. I didn't think that Wagner was going to get the stipulation just because of how the storyline's been going, but I guess anything could have been possible.
Yeah,
I enjoyed it.
I didn't think it was going to end cleanly. It seemed like it ended almost earlier than I was expecting. Havoc hit his it was a moonsault, I think.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, overall it was a good match. I thought it was great back and forth. But at the same time, it is kind of surprising that Wagner, lost cleanly and without question. I thought it was interesting. The stipulation that was chosen is a Believers Backlash match. It's going to happen next week. Masqueradis versus Famous B. Believers Backlash match, and the Believers get to bring any weapon of their choosing to be used in the match. Now, it should be interesting to see how this plays out, because the last time we saw this type of match, it was with Hernandez. For whatever reason, I can't remember who Hernandez was facing at the time, but it was straps. So the crowd were equipped with straps and were hitting Hernandez over and over again with these straps. Do you think the crowd is going to get involved in that kind of capacity again? Or do you think they're going to just hand off the weapons to Son of Havoc? Or I'm sorry, Masquerade Sagrada?
I think it'll probably be a mix of the two, depending on what the weapon is. I believe it was Jurago that Hernandez was fighting, by the way. But don't quote me on that. And yeah, I do think, like I said, it also depends on like how freeing they make this stipulation, because outside of Lucha Underground, typically the stipulation is called Fans Bring the Weapons, which is very famously held once a year in a Canadian promotion called IWS. And in that promotion, they legitimately like give fans free full reign within reason, of course. Like, don't bring anything that's actually going to kill someone, like a knife or a chainsaw or something like that. But like, anything that has been used in a wrestling match before is fair game, and they get super creative about it. They'll make usually it's around Christmas time that they host it. So I've heard fans make like a whole nativity scene out of like light tubes and stuff like that, and just like super weird like stuff you'd never see. Like someone made like a Christmas tree out of barbed wire. I don't think that Lucha Underground is going to get that creative. I have a feeling they're probably just going to hand off a bunch of random weapons to the Believers based on how they do their filming schedule for their show. And then, we'll see where it goes from there. So I think if it's fairly tame by comparison to that Fans Bring the Weapons match, then yeah, I think some fans will probably get some shots in, because as I remember from the Hernandez match, they didn't like, just swarm him and lay into him for like 10 minutes. Like, it was like, okay, the match went on for a minute, then, at certain points, like, Hernandez got his licks, and then the match went on for a minute. I'm assuming they're probably going to do some sort of choreography like that, based again on how they film and the magic of editing, that they can kind of get away with sort of directing the crowd on when's the right time to attack and when's the right time just to watch. So I have a feeling we'll be seeing some shots from the Believers. I also have a feeling, depending on knowing that Masquerita Sagrada is pretty creative when it comes to doing moves, that we'll be seeing some weapon handoffs so that he can enhance those moves with a chair or what have you. So yeah, it should be a fun day at the office.
Beanbags in the live chat is throwing out there that CZW does something similar in their tournament of death matches. So yeah, it is definitely something that we see often or often enough in the indie scene. I think what will set this match apart from, say, the Hernandez match is just that there isn't that hatred from the crowd on one person. Famous B, sure, he's a heel, but overall with the get fame thing, I mean, that's over. Fans do enjoy Famous B, so I think I don't think it's going to be as one-sided as the Hernandez match was.
True.
So, and it's also going to be a lot more humorous. It's going to be a lot more, funny.
I agree with that. I do think that there are quite a few Believers that feel the same way we do, that it's about time Masquerita Sagrada got his day in the sun, so to speak. So I think that might have an element to the match.
All right, so last week on episode 8, we ended with a segment. Puma was backstage training, using a stick of some sort in a punching bag. Vampiro interrupts and reminds Puma that he should be proud of what he did with Mill before, that he was able to get that revenge. And yeah, he should be proud of the win, but that was just step one, because we all know that Mill is not going to be, he's not done. What was also very, very cool was that Vampiro predicted that, and I think this might have been a few weeks prior, but he predicted that Puma will be the one to kill Mill, and that last week he said that he's sure he hated Conan, and he understands why Vampiro, or why Puma is not totally open to receiving this type of feedback from Vampiro. But while he never had respect for Conan, he always had respect for Puma. This week, in the ring, we saw Puma come out, and he said he wants Mill in Grave Consequences. Mill does come out. He's very dapper, wearing a suit and tie. But overall, how do you see this story playing out? Do you like the direction they're going with this? With these predictions from Vampiro that Puma will take Mill out, will theoretically kill Mill, and that this is now going to be a Grave Consequences match.
I definitely like to see the return of Grave Consequences. I think it's a fun spin on the casket match, especially when Lucha Underground goes kind of all out. They have the obviously this week we had the passing of Dia de los Muertos. So the fact that they're doing a Grave or a Grave Consequences match close to there, I think is very cool because they do usually have the, the Sugar Skull people coming out with the casket when it comes out, and that's always cool. Yeah, the story, like, man, I kind of like it because there's a lot of different ways they can go. Part of me has been speculating ever since Vampiro started coming into Puma's ear. Is this a possible return for Conan? Could we see Conan come back in some capacity, maybe even through the Grave Consequences match? Does this also mean we could see potentially an alliance down the road between Puma and Pentagon? Or, is there going to be a feud between Puma and Pentagon? Maybe. There's so many creative directions that they could go with this. I will say, like, I think when they suggest, like, Puma is going to kill Mill, I'm assuming it's like the burden of having lost the title to Mill will finally be cast away from his shoulders. I don't think the Mill is going away permanently. I don't know if he ever will.
No, I can't imagine that. I can't imagine that they would remove Mill. He's such a good character.
And what, he's got like 997, 996 lives somewhere around there at this point. So, like, we got a while. We got a while before he burns through them all. So,
so let's talk about how this plays into the whole tribe setup. This is something that I talked about on the last episode. You didn't have an opportunity to talk about this a whole lot, but the way I was looking at it, you've got Puma and the Jaguar tribe. You've got, the way I was seeing it, maybe Pentagon Jr. and Vampiro in the Lotus tribe, just because of Black Lotus using the ninjas, Pentagon using a lot of the Asian Japanese writing on his gear and his overall fighting style. Serpent is where I had Mill and Katrina along with Drago and Cobra Moon. Do you think it's good that we're potentially seeing two tribes kind of partnering up in Vampiro and Puma to take out Mill, who is, again, in my viewpoint, in the Serpent tribe, or am I looking at the tribe setup all wrong?
I think it's a good. I think it's definitely a good starting point. I'm not sure. I'm not sure where everyone's totally going to fall. The thing is, do we know all the like? Have we firmly confirmed like all the 7 tribes that are involved, or are there some empty spaces there?
I have put together 7 tribes, but no, it's not been confirmed at all.
Okay.
I mean, they really haven't discussed. I mean, they've discussed some tribes as far as naming tribes. Black Lotus definitely named the Lotus tribe.
Right.
Drago, Cobra Moon definitely named the Serpent tribe.
Right.
Marty, the Moth tribe. But everything else, I was just trying to fill in.
Sure.
Potential blanks. So to me, I've got Dragon Azteca and Rey Mysterio in the Dragon tribe, Phoenix in the Eagle tribe, and then my last tribe is the Bull with Dario and Matanza. Okay, but that's just me guessing, really.
Sure. Well, those are good guesses, I think. The alliance, potential alliance, I should say, with the tribes, I think is something that will be necessary if you look at, it seems like how they're going as a whole with the storyline. I suspect that there will be some continued tribe infighting until we get more answers about the medallion. because what I'm thinking is going to happen is that eventually certain tribes will form alliances to either, Katrina and her half of the medallion, or the captain of the police and her half. So, but that's purely speculation on my part. So I think there will be like kind of a smaller sort of, it seems like how they're trying to tell the story, especially with Captain Vasquez kind of telling Cortez several times, like, listen, Cueto's not really the target here. There's a bigger story at play. So I believe the tribal infighting is meant as sort of a distraction while a bigger game is being played. Now, who is at the higher level there and playing that bigger game, and who is like the bigger threat? I'm not sure if it's going to be Cueto at the end, if it's going to be Katrina, if it might be this other guy that Cueto is like helping out with the body for, and all that stuff. I'm not sure about all those things, but I do think that tribal alliances will be necessary by the time we get to that point. So yeah, I mean, of the tribes, it does, if you were to assign them sort of a moral compass, it does make sense to me that like Lotus, Jaguar, Dragon, those tribes seem for the most part fairly like good intentioned, so I could definitely see those making alliances down the road.
And we, at this point, like we still don't know who all these tribes are, who represents each tribe. How far down the road do you think we're going to get before we get that kind of information, or this big general battle that we assume is going to be happening at some point? Do you think it happens midway through the life of Lucha Underground, or like, to me it almost seems like that's like the final piece, and like once you hit that point and you crown the leading tribe, like what more is there after that?
Well, I think it also depends on the general success that Lucha Underground hopefully continues to have over the coming years. And, much in the way of like, it really, I mean, don't get me wrong, every story needs an end. I'm an avid comic book fan, and I do love the idea of a continued timeline, because the story doesn't always end, like or at least time always continues. I do like that idea. The problem is with comic books, usually they kind of finagle the rules for that. Like, for example, you take Bruce Wayne, Batman. Like, realistically, if you were to like actually chronologue his life accurately to when he was created to now, right now he should be like 80 or 90 years old. But they never did that. They kept him ageless. I mean, yeah, you could say Batman Beyond, but like that in and of itself was kind of a separate glance at the timeline. And even then, like, he was way younger than he really should have been by that point in the timeline. So I don't want to see Lucha Underground do something like that, where if they don't have more story to tell after this big climactic battle, then I don't think that they should. But assuming that whole 7-year contract thing is kind of their time frame, then yeah, I definitely see more buildup coming. I don't think we're going to see. I see more hints this season, but I don't think we're going to see any firm confirmations or anything like that. I have a feeling this season, I think, ends with people realizing a bigger game at play. I think maybe seasons 4 and 5 might have the alliances start to form stronger bonds between the tribes, and then 6 and 7 would probably have essentially the war itself play out between the two. If I were to give it like a rough breakdown right now.
Sure.
But that all said, I don't necessarily would ever suggest that just because this whole it's kind of like the Marvel movies as well. Just because Phase 3 ends, we see the last the planned up to that point for Avengers movies play, doesn't mean that Marvel will just stop making movies at that point. Like, then they can kind of figure out a different creative direction to go. So, to me, whenever it comes to storytelling as a whole, it really all depends on what story you have to tell. If your story is not interesting enough to continue, then yeah, you should just end it, or bring new characters in and leave the old ones behind, kind of thing. But overall, like, I see Lucha Underground only kind of gaining in momentum rather than slowing it. So I think they got a lot of story with this one to work through, and who knows, what sparks of creativity may come from that as it's resolves itself. So I see Lucha Underground going on for a while at least.
All right. So one thing that we did not mention, we saw a few other video packages for this newcomer or this new group. Lots of visuals for White Rabbits, TikTok, that sort of thing. Should note that it is very, very much so tribe related, and that we did get some better views this week and last week of the tribe symbol on the back of the jacket of this figurehead. To me, it looks like a cat of some sort. So to me, I'm putting him into the Jaguar tribe. Seems fitting.
Yeah, I mean, I could kind of see that. I can't help, like, since we've already opened up the creative floodgates, thinking like rabbits typically are the prey of jaguars. So I don't know how that would even factor in, if it would, but it's a little worrisome, I think. Also, is the symbol on the jacket the same as the Aztec calendar symbol they usually show at the end of his vignettes, or is it different?
I'm not sure. I don't for some reason don't remember the Aztec calendar symbol that they were using.
Okay, well, it's not exactly an Aztec calendar. It just kind of looks similar with the rings around it.
Sure.
And it looks like in that symbol that there's a rabbit in the middle of it. So I don't know exactly what, I would assume they were both the same. But again, like with that kind of Aztec art style, it's definitely like sometimes a little bit harder to identify what they're going for. So it probably, I mean, realistically, remembering the symbol in my mind's eye, it could go either way. It could be cat or rabbit. So
well, but like time is something that is definitely pushed here, and
sure,
the White Rabbit and Alice in Wonderland,
right.
I'm getting that vibe that they're they're integrating that kind of feel. He's got the top hat. He's got the big glasses, kind of Mad Hatter style. So to me, I don't necessarily associate the rabbit with a tribe.
Sure.
I think it's just more or less like just alluding to the overall game that we've got going on with these tribes building up, and with the leading towards that that battle.
That's fair. And honestly, I only mention it just because the writer in me kind of likes to, I guess, have options when it comes to like trying to figure out someone else's story, and it's kind of a weird sort of self-indulgent thing to be like, oh well, I saw that possibility, so I obviously know where you're going with it. But it's it could be nothing. In fact, most of the time with any story that I digest, it tends to not be anything at all. But it's always fun to speculate, I think, the different possibilities.
All right, so we'll continue to talk about this, the seven tribes, who represents them, where things are going as we continue down, the Lucha Underground story. Definitely, if you've got if you've got ideas of, because there still are quite a few characters that don't necessarily fit with the tribe aspect. Again, like Cage, Son of Havoc, Blackjack Mundo, Evilise, Angelico, Dago, Sexy Star. There are a lot of these characters that seem to be outside of that realm. But if you've got some theories, definitely share those, whether that's on the Facebook group or on Twitter or what have you. So, but that leads us to the main event, Season 3, Episode 9 of Lucha Underground. The main event, Rey Mysterio versus Chavo. Loser leaves the temple. To me, this was really built by the commentary. It almost had a feeling like, this was the end of a career type match. Not just loser leaves the temple and then they go on to other things, but that this was like the end of their involvement in wrestling and the overall story altogether. So, thoughts on that and thoughts on the match, in general.
They definitely did paint that picture very well, I think. That said, I have a feeling, the loser will be back at some point. It may be a while before we see them again, but knowing Lucha Underground, knowing how they tend to use their characters, save them for pretty dramatic moments and stuff like that, and knowing the looming potential threat of this giant kind of apocalyptic war that might be coming, I have a feeling by that point they'll probably want all hands on deck, and I wouldn't even be surprised if the winner asked the loser to come back. So that would be pretty cool. As far as the match itself, I thought it was very good. Typical fare from a match between Chavo and Rey Mysterio. They work so well together. They know each other so well. It's very much, like I said before, like a Michaels and Hart situation, or Owens and Zayn, or and I know it's another Michaels one, but Michaels and Triple H. Like they've been around each other for so long in their lives that they just have pretty much any time that they wrestle in a match together down to a science, which is always really nice to see. It just shows I think the love of the craft for both of them, and how they really not just enjoy wrestling each other, but enjoy wrestling in general, and they're able to flex their wrestling muscle in such a way when they complement each other that it's really hard to find that perfect kind of pairing, so that was cool. I definitely like the spot where Chavo Classic gets involved, and it looks like he's gonna just whack the hell out of Rey Mysterio with a chair, but then he kind of says, I'm not that stupid, and whacks Chavo with the chair instead, which caused the DQ finish. And it looked, to all intents and purposes, that Rey would be the one leaving Lucha, and for the second time in a row, I was going to be extremely pissed off, warrantedly so, at a heel, but still super pissed off, because I was like, come on, man. My biggest fear was that if this was Rey's last match, that he was going back to WWE, and I was going to be so disappointed in that. I didn't want to see him essentially make the same mistake as El Patron did. So I was extremely concerned about that. But turns out Cueto comes out, restarts the match. So good. Yes. Yeah. I literally, as best I could with my hurt ankle, I literally jumped up and was like, fuck yes. I don't think I've had that reaction inside of my home. At a wrestling event, sure. But inside of my home, I don't think I've had that reaction for at least 10 to 12 years, when I first started watching wrestling. So Yeah, it was definitely really exciting. And then Ray ends up getting the Duke and sending Chavo on his way.
Yeah, I love the fact that that Cueto restarted the match. It fit the character perfectly. It fit the story perfectly. The other thing that I really appreciated in this is that, normally when we see Chavo, he would sit there and complain, and then, wrestling wise, what you normally would see is like a quick roll up and then win. But Chavo, it didn't necessarily phase him. He got back into it, quickly went into submission mode, just trying to wear down Ray. I thought it was a real nice touch to just, how brutal this feud is, and how emotionally involved both are in in what's going on. So yeah, I definitely enjoyed that. I thought this was a great match. But yes, Rey Mysterio wins. Chavo is out. The first question that came to mind to me, going back to the tribe conversation a little bit, where do the Guerrero family, like where does that fit into this whole tribe thing with Chavo leaving? Does that suggest that they aren't involved in the tribes? But then again, you said it's unlikely we won't ever see Chavo again. He'll be back in some capacity. So yeah, I don't know. What's your thoughts on that? Like, is the Guerrero family a part of this tribe thing, or are they sort of like outsiders?
If I had to slot them anywhere, I'd probably also put them in the Dragon Tribe, just because like you can tell, in the setup to this match, like we talked about before with Chavo Classic and Ray having talked it out in the backstage area as to whether this was okay or not. I don't see Ray doing that unless he, was like, well, I don't want to start any trouble within our tribe, more or less, or at least within, our family, which was kind of the way that he worded it when he was talking to Chavo Classic. But I think that I think Chavo, the regular, I guess, I think he would be a member of the Dragon Tribe, and I could see him kind of helping the Dragon Tribe in a nefarious way, that since it tends to be made up of mostly the goodiest of two shoe technicos, that we need kind of a sort of outsider, not necessarily outsider, but like sort of a more shady perspective, to solve whatever problem we need. In comes Chavo. So that's how I see it playing out. We'll see if I am right, and I don't think we'll see that for probably at least a whole season, if not more. So
Yeah, I definitely like that theory that at least what you got out of that segment between Ray and Chavo Classic. To me, when I was putting these tribes together, the Guerreros, it was hard to really determine where I felt like they fit. I didn't have them in the Dragon, and to me, it almost felt like it was, that it was two tribes and their respect for one another, and that Ray didn't want to start, a tribe war between two tribes. So, to me, I have the Guerreros either in the Jaguar tribe just because of the fighting style, but I could also see them in the Bull tribe as well.
Sure,
but again, I don't know. It's so hard. It's so hard to tell where they fit. But I do enjoy that theory that that this was an internal Dragon Tribe kind of feud.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the reason why I lean that way too, is that when you talk about the Guerreros, obviously you're not just talking about Chavo and Chavo Classic. Obviously Eddie, you got Hector, there's a couple other the brothers too. And when you think about the entire family as a whole, for me, they're not all bad eggs, as usually Chavo and Chavo Classic of that branch of the family tree has been classified as. So when I think of the entire Guerrero family as a whole, I'm like, okay, so they're pretty well respected within the Lucha community. So to me, that kind of speaks more towards the Dragon Tribe, because again, it seems like they are very much like the most honor bound tribes. Like Jaguar kind of, they definitely exercise their honor, but even seeing Puma in recent weeks, like for most of the other members that we don't see often, like Bengali. I wouldn't be surprised if, I don't know if we'll ever see Tiger Mask, but I think it's in that vein of like how Tiger Mask was, where he was a heel for a very long time and then became, just a super beloved face. But that dark side's always there. That's what I always see from the Jaguar tribe. So not to say that, in my opinion, Chavo couldn't defect to like a Jaguar tribe, but I definitely see like the entire Guerrero family's origins belonging to the Dragon Tribe.
So, yeah, I think that basically is it as far as the recap and review of season 3, episode 8 and episode 9. Coming up, we've got the Believers Backlash match between Famous B and Masquerita Sagrada next week. And we also have Puma versus Mill and Grave Consequences coming up, but they never really specified a date on that. And then the following week, we have Aztec Warfare 3, which will most likely take the entire episode, just as it has in the past.
Sure.
And then also, obviously we've got match number 4 of Tejano versus Cage. That'll be coming up in the next few episodes as well. So let's just go into final thoughts. Any final thoughts as we head into Aztec Warfare 3?
I'm curious to see if Johnny will cash in his title shot before Aztec Warfare 3, and if not, if he's entered into Aztec Warfare at that point. So I guess we'll just have to see how that plays out.
Yeah, I definitely think that he will be involved. I would have to imagine he's involved. But I don't see him turning in the shot prior to that match or next week at all. I think it would happen maybe the week after, depending on who's the champion.
Yeah, fair enough.
Because they've been playing this, the Weasley heel cheating, he might hold off turning in that title for a little bit longer. Play mind games or just showing that he wants to hold that gold a bit longer to improve his overall legacy as a Lucha Underground champion.
Sure. Of course, you also have the potential that if Johnny does somehow gain both titles, that Sexy Star could potentially challenge for the Gift of the Gods and then cash it in the next week, which would be an interesting little dynamic there too.
No, that's definitely cool, and it would be cool to see a rematch for that type of title, that type of just the importance of everything. So I'm definitely with you.
Okay.
From the live chat, what's your overall thoughts on season 3 so far? Are you into it as much as you were season 1 and season 2? Because I know I am. I'm when season 3 started, I wasn't. I didn't think it was living up to the overall vibe, the overall feeling of everything going on. But I got to say, with these last few weeks and now that, you know, we're starting to dip into the tribe conversation, it does have me just as interested in what's going on. I don't know if I'm as interested in the matches themselves as much as I was in season 1 and season 2, but from a story perspective, I'm definitely more you know, more into the story, the overall story being told this season.
Yeah, I would say the same myself. Like, again, I was a little surprised that we were starting to get pretty big advancements into, you know, the Seven Tribes / Apocalyptic War story arc that's kind of been encompassing all the seasons. That we got a lot of information about it this season, and I was like, oh man, I hope they're not like tipping their cards too early. But after seeing it play out, I think they're doing it pretty well. Like they have a really good job of like getting you super interested in something one episode and then saying, oh, but hey, here's this other thing to kind of distract you from it. And you don't necessarily feel like bad for being distracted or like frustrated by being distracted. You know, like that first, I think it was in season 2 when the first time they did the flashback to the legitimate Aztec tribe. And then they had just Aerostar showing up and saying like, yeah, well, I got to go tell people in the future. And then he flew away like that. I was like, what is that about? Like, I don't even understand what's happening right now. And then they kind of did something similar with the medallion and it being split in half. And there's more we want to know about it. But I think for the most part, because of the other stories being interesting as well that they're telling, we're fine being distracted until the next time that comes up. So I think they do a very good job of that kind of story structure of sort of giving you this little hint that seems to kind of just extremely expand the scope of the story, yet it's just enough to keep you satisfied until the next big kind of bomb drop. So that's very good on them.
Yeah, on one hand, I really want to know where this is going. You know, like I'm the wrestling fan in me is used to the very fast-paced way that, you know, WWE and TNA tell their stories, in that, you know, it might be a month, might be 2 months, you know, that something goes on. So, you know, I'm getting that itch that I want to know that, you know, that future result. But at the same time, like, I am definitely enjoying the journey of how this story is being written and told.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, so that is episode 52 of Fans Talk Lucha. You can find out more about us and what we do at fanstalklucha.com, and join us every Sunday. We record live at noon Eastern Time on fanstalkpodcast.com /live. You can join us in the live chat or just listen in. That's cool too. But definitely, if you've got some theories of where things are going as far as, you know, how the tribes are lining up right now, definitely share those thoughts with us. We love reading and talking about that. So, yeah, that's it. My name is Garvin. For Adam, everyone in the live chat, we will see you next week. Adios.
Adios.